It's the last game of the season, and it's the biggest game of the season for both Texas Tech and West Virginia. Could both possibly sneak into the Big 12 championship game? And can Neal Brown survive a loss? Lots of storylines, guys, and this is going to be on Locked On West Virginia and Texas Tech crossover. Make sure you stick around for that.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in, guys. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host, and this is a Locked On crossover episode. Locked On West Virginia, Locked On Texas Tech. Thank you for making Locked On West Virginia or Texas Tech your first listen every day, and for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. Obviously, this is going to be brought to you by Game Time, guys. This episode, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so obviously this guy is a legend in the Texas Tech community. I think he is the equivalent of a Tony Caridi in my eyes for them. He's a guy that can be considered one of the voices of Texas Tech sports. He's a guy that's I'm happy to call a coworker at Locked On. We're talking about Chris Level at Locked On Texas Tech, man. What is up, brother?
My man, Paul, it's hoodie season. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man, and fun to talk ball with you always. Thank you for the kind words. And it just means, you setting it up, it just means I'm old. That's really all that or older.
I like to say established.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'll go with that. But yeah, I've been doing this a long time. Yes.
I didn't realize we basically have the same hoodie on, huh?
I think so. Yes, something like that.
Two different colors.
Yes, you got it.
So this is going to be an interesting game. We've got the gamut. We've got everything from one or either of these teams can play in the Big 12 title game through just a myriad of tiebreakers to the Neal Brown situation. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll give you my my background there in that, I've known because I'm kind of curious what the Neal Brown situation is. In that I knew that people are frustrated and all those things, and he won 9 games last year, and they haven't won enough home games this year, and all those things. I've known Neal since 2010. He came in here as the offensive coordinator and was a part of some really good offenses under Tommy Tuberville. Chad Scott was a part of those staffs. So was awesome. Matt Moore that coaches the offensive line. So know all 3 of those guys. I think a lot of them. But they had some NFL guys around here, and all that. So really have kind of kept up with him and rooted for Neal and all those guys really since. So I just don't know how hot the seat is. They're going to a bowl game again. They won 9 games last year. I get that people may want more, and I deal with the same thing. And here in Lubbock at Texas Tech, people just, if you don't win them all, there's frustration there. But yeah, you just have to kind of lay it out for me on kind of where. And I know there's like UMass stuff too. I don't know what's true, what's not. I don't.
Right. There is a little bit of smoke to the UMass thing. It's more from their side.
I see. Which is where he went, right?
That's where he went. He played there for a couple of years.
Yep.
I do have a contact over there, but they would love to have him. Obviously, he's like second on their list. The OC for the Tampa Bay Bucks played quarterback for him. He's the number 1 guy. He's probably not going to leave the Buccaneers to go coach UMass, I would imagine. So Neal would be a great consolation for them. Obviously, a guy who's been successful, especially at Troy, probably could easily rebuild a UMass situation. It's to the point to where, unfortunately, it's unfortunate because we really have a lot of us have loved Neal for a long time. Really rooted for him I rooted for him the whole time, but you get to a certain point to where, okay, you haven't ever been ranked, not once, in 6 years. That's really hard to overcome that kind of stuff. It's hard to overcome never beating a ranked team ever. You're 3-18 versus ranked teams. never beating a ranked team ever to finish with more than 7 or 8 wins in a year. And there's just a lot against Neal. The seat's blistering hot at this point. We've got a lot of reports saying that it's probably over. Even if we wins, there are some people that feel like he's gone. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a path. But
what is the money owed?
It's right. It's actually like one of the lesser in the Big 12, right at about $9 million. Okay. 14 with coaches. West Virginia is unfortunately in a situation where they're in the red in the budget, and West Virginia also gets less help from the university than any other athletic department in the conference. So something's got to give. We think, they had a board of governors meeting. We don't know what that entailed just the other day. Excuse me. But we think that conversations were had about both sides of the equation, keep versus go. Obviously, the conversation you have to have. You have to be proactive. If it's going to happen, you got to think as soon as the game's over. If it does happen, it's got to be done right then. So if something's not done by Monday, I would imagine he's coming back.
Yeah,
because you've got portal, you've got
signing day
on the 4th. There's just too much going on, Chris, and there's a pretty good class coming in that you hand it off to the next guy and hope you can keep it intact, and then try to work through the portal, or those kids need to know. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of moving parts, and then Neal Brown could be standing in Arlington, possibly. The ultimate weird thing,
Yeah, and it's there's some irony here because Ren Baker, who's the athletic director there now, that's having to make some of these decisions, and with the help of whatever administration or donors that are involved, he's who ultimately hired Grant McCaslin, who coaches basketball at Texas Tech now, and so I've known, and Ren's in Oklahoma. He's from Oklahoma, and so I've kind of known him and known of him and all that. But it kind of all is a weird dynamic here for sure. The one thing about coaches, first of all, the money involved, I just don't think people can overlook that part just because of what we're about to get into with revenue sharing.
Right.
And I think that is where, because people have said this is going to be a cycle that's going to be the slowest really maybe ever or in recent memory, because everybody's got $22 million bill that they're going to owe a year from now, and it's not going to stop, and it's going to go up a little bit. And all these buyouts and all these, and it's just expensive. And then you get into the equation. Well, can we afford not to make a move? If you've lost the fans, or if there's no belief, can you afford not to do anything? But somebody's got to pay these bills, and it's just interesting dynamics in college sports. And that's the one thing about the playoff that it's kind of been a weird dynamic, is that are we about to start living in a world where if you don't make it to the conference championship game, you're a miserable failure? Because there's going to be a lot of miserable people out there in the world if that's the case.
Yeah.
It just, because it's just hard. I mean, everybody wants to win. Everybody's pouring resources into this stuff. I mean, Texas Tech just spent $250 million on one end of their stadium and their football complex. And they're talking about a whole bunch more money to go at it in the portal, like just this upcoming window, because they're frustrated that they're only a 7-win team and maybe an 8-win team and all that. But it's just costly, and there's not any such thing as a quick fix. But you look at Indiana, you look at a BYU, you look at some of these examples, and
Sonny Dykes, what he did in year one.
Yeah, and then he hadn't been able to really
replicate that.
Yeah. So it's just it's hard to win football games, man. It really is. And I said this to you, and this isn't me like criticizing the West Virginia fan base or anything like that, because I love my time up there. I go up there every year for basketball, it seems like, and every other year for football. It's a beautiful place. But this league is much, and Mountaineer fans will disagree with this sentiment, and that's fine. But this is just much different game in and game out than it was in the Big East. Like, I think Texas Tech fans are still stuck in the Mike Leach era, and it's like, it doesn't matter how many points that they score now, it's not good enough because it's not what. And I think some of the times either fan base here has these fond memories of what it used to be like and how you were doing this and that, but it's different now. And but again, I want to win as much as anybody. I know you do too. I certainly get it. I can't tell anybody how to feel or what they deserve or what they're owed or what they, I mean, that's to each his own. But finances come into this stuff, and these are tricky decisions because these are big checks that you're about to have to start writing, and those are due every year, which is a brand new time.
You make a lot of great points. Before we go to break here, I'll make a quick one. I think everybody needs to ask themselves this question when it comes to a coach. And if the only reason you're keeping a guy is financial reasons, that can't be the only reason. I think personally for me, that can't be. Yes, it's a huge obstacle. And yes, everything you said is true. But I have to question at some point how serious you are if you can't come up with $9 million for a guy, if that's what you think needs to be done. Yeah. If you think he needs to stay and you want to hang your hat on that, then you do, But
who would they? I'll throw this out just real quick. Who would they? If I were to tell you, okay, the deed is done and that they're going to move on, who would it be that they would want to, target, or who could they afford at this point, or because finances come into play on that stuff too? But
sure.
Take me through that dynamic.
Well, there's a few different ways it could go. Some people think Jimbo would come back and coach this team. I don't know. Who knows? He said he would. When he was at Texas Tech, he said, "I'll never rule out going back home." I don't know. I don't want that. I think he was horrible there. He was 6-12 versus in his last 18 versus Power 5 teams. He didn't win a road game for 2 straight years.
Yeah, he's got multiple ranches now, and what is he sitting on, $75 million? Now you could probably get him cheap, because he'd be like, I don't really need the big salary, but I don't know if he'd want that grind, but who knows?
Rich Rod is the other quick name people will throw out, and because he just won 8 straight and won a Conference USA.
Yeah.
And then you look at a guy like Colton Nickey or a guy like Garrett Riley, who make about 1.5, who would definitely be a move up for them. Obviously, from OC spots, that would be great fits, I think. Okay. Those are names. And then the Schumann guy at DC at Georgia is another name I've heard. And then you start to look at the established group of 5 guys. Gotcha. We're not going to be grabbing any established Power 5 coach from what not that I can think of off the top of my head. There's probably 1 or 2, but I don't think so, man, because Neal Brown's getting $4 million a year, right? He's not getting 6 or 7 like some coaches in the Big 12 are. Like, he's not getting Gundy money. He's not getting nothing. Like, he's not even getting Joey McGuire money. So
I think that's about what Joey makes. I think somewhere around in there. Joey's still early in his tenure here, just his 3rd year. But
I guess I just assume you guys got so much money,
Well, no, I mean, sometimes you would think that, sometimes not. But yeah, so it's but hey, we all want to win. And I get it. It's wild though, because I was really close with Dana Holgerson too. Because Dana was here, for many years, like 8 or 9 years, and I still talk to Dana whenever I see him. And now he's working with Joey McGuire's son at University of Nebraska. So it's all kind of intertwined here. But I know people up there not fond of Dana, and maybe not be fond of Neal now. But I like Neal. I think he's a class act, but I certainly
he is a class act.
Yeah, and that's what's hard about this stuff, because he's always honest and transparent. And I even saw that earlier this week he said, I was asked about after the game when they beat UCF, and he's like, well, it was a relief, if I'm being honest with you. And that's just kind of – and that's – you get paid well in these positions, and that's why people don't feel sorry for you, but there's a human side of it, and you do. I get close to some of these folks and I empathize with them, but again, there's things that come with the salary. That's just part of it, and that part is hard. But I'm sure he's getting put through it. But yeah, he's
family too.
Yeah, he's good people.
If we rattle it off, there's been Fire Neal Brown billboards. There's been Neal Brown toilet paper made. There's been planes threatened to be flown over the stadium.
Oh, man.
And there's more, I can even go on further. So it's been rough for the family of Neal Brown. And they had a moment at the end of that game because I don't think he knows what's going to happen yet. and they wanted, and that was the final home game of the year. And I think they had a moment just in case,
Yeah, gotcha.
That's what it looked like to all of us. So up next on Locked On Crossover, guys, we're going to get into this game. There's a lot of implications. Keys to the game impact players, but can West Virginia go on the road and do what's one of the hardest things to do in the Big 12? That's win in Lubbock for the Mountaineers. I think that's a conversation worth having, and that's going to happen right here on Locked On Crossover. And this episode of Locked On Crossover is brought to you by Him Sexual Health, guys. Intimate moments do happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, give you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's health care by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your own couch. That's right. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. Once again, that's hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable, compounded products which are not approved by verified for safety or effectiveness for the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for details and important safety information. Subscriptions are required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. And this episode is going to be also brought to you by FanDuel, guys. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. That's if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started and get that $150 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. And we are back on Locked On Crossover. Chris Level, man, that was a good first segment, man. This segment, we're going to talk about the game itself. Joey McGuire's team has really been putting up points here in the last few games. What do you attribute this offensive uptick to?
Well, it's been nice around here because they've had the same quarterback start. He's going to start his 12th game on Saturday. It's been the first time since Patrick Mahomes did it in like 15 or 16. So it's been a minute. Since Joey's gotten here, this is his third year. I think he started 5 different quarterbacks or something. Wow. Yeah, it's that is one of the biggest things is you've had consistency there and health there, and Barron's been solid, to good. 25 TDs, 7 interceptions, about 3,000 yards. It's been solid, and I think he's had a really good year, and they're balanced. If you want to load it up and stop Taj Brooks, they'll throw it deep on you and kind of throw it down the field. If you want to try to play back and keep it all in front of you, they'll turn Taj Brooks loose on you. They've got some really good tight ends, so their offensive line has not been very good. Joey talked about that earlier this week. That's something they've just got to be better at. Colorado ate them up. That's a big reason why you're not in a control your own destiny situation is your offensive line play, and I think just some of the leakiness that you've got going on defense. But offensively, their skill is very good. It's balanced, and I think it's been. And it needed to get better. It wasn't very good last year. It needed to get better, and they knew it. And they went and got some help out there in the old portal, and you get your running back to come back, and you kept your quarterback healthy, and all that is kind of equal to a pretty explosive and consistent offense.
If there's one pass defense might have been worse than West Virginia's in the Big 12 this year, it's Texas Tech's.
Oh, yeah.
It's been rough for you guys over there, man. To give up 48 to – and look, Gundy always gets his teams right. Not saying that he doesn't, but to give up 48 to that Oklahoma State team this year is pretty bad.
And it was a true freshman quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've been wanting that kid to play, though, too, fairly. They've been waiting for him to play.
I can see why now, but maybe that was Texas Tech that made him look like that.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, he looked good. Ollie Gordon looked good. I mean, that was the scary thing about that game is everybody knows the names Ollie Gordon and Brennan Presley. They've got the Stribling kid who's got about 800 or 900 yards receiving on the outside. Their skill is good on paper, and their offensive line is all back. It just, for whatever reason, it just wasn't clicking. And I think Alan Bowman was a big part of the problem. Well, they're underachieving, but no, it's you had to hold on and outscore that team. I mean, that was not a stress-free Saturday afternoon in Stillwater, that's for sure.
You know, they had a stat. It's not, I don't know if you call this a stat, but they had something I read up on in the offseason, and they started 5 sixth-year seniors on the offensive line this year. Oklahoma State did.
Right. Yep.
It'll never happen again.
No.
That's not something that'll ever happen again.
And I think the folks in Stillwater would tell you it's a bit of a negative in some ways because there's a lot of tread on the tires there.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of wear and tear is kind of what the people close to that. Yeah, but to tell you how bad Texas Tech's pass defense is, how about this for a crazy stat? You've played 11 games. 5 of the 11 games that you've played, the opposing quarterback has won an award in their league on that Monday. That includes the Oklahoma State true freshman. Yeah, and that doesn't include John Mateer at Washington State because the Pac-12 is not handing out weekly awards and all that because there's just 2 schools. But that just kind of sums up that, boy, you've made some people look really, really good, unfortunately. And yet I don't know if that's Texas Tech's biggest concern with the Mountaineers. It's these running backs and Garrett Green's legs that I think would scare the Red Raiders the most in a what I expect to be a limited possession game.
Yep.
It may last 2.5 hours, but battle of the running games, I don't know.
So real quick before we move on to that, is Tim DeRuyter in any trouble based on all this? I mean, he's been a part of the program forever, you think.
Yeah, he came here with Joey, or not come here with him, but Joey brought him in whenever Joey got the job. It's a fair question. I think Joey kind of said early in the week that they weren't sure. They were already kind of making some decisions, but they weren't there yet, and they would have to execute some of those decisions over the weekend. And whether we're talking staff or personnel or scheme, but he admitted something has to change because I think most people would tell you, and this doesn't matter if this is West Virginia or Texas Tech, you've got to be like basically top 40-ish offensively and top 40-ish defensively if you ever want to win the league title. Yep. Yeah, and you got to have both. Yep. And right now you're top 12 or 15 offensively, whether it's total offense or scoring offense, and you're like in the 120s and 130s when it comes to total defense and scoring defense. And so, and you are young on defense, and you hope that there's a payoff because a lot of these young guys will grow up and be older next year. They've taken some lumps. You're only going to graduate like 3 or 4 kids off of this team, so the bulk of these kids will be back. And there is some talent there. They just have these lapses. Yeah. But they went to Tucson and played well. They went to Fort Worth and played well for about 3-ish quarters. They went to Iowa State and played well. But consistently, it's just been, and last Saturday was bad. I mean, there's just no other way around it. You just couldn't get them stopped. And I think it was that's a concern for sure.
So –
yeah, you've had your own defensive issues as well.
We have.
Switching coordinators mid-season and all that. Like any better since Jordan Leslie was let go, Paul?
Yeah, it's definitely improved. I think, the thing they wanted to get done was a lot. I would say probably at least half of the big plays that were happening were a result of we don't know where to go. And then all of a sudden, the linebackers matched up on a wide receiver. We've seen it happen like 3 times in one game where one of our linebackers was matched up on a wide receiver, which is also great coaching, obviously. Guy goes in motion, the linebacker doesn't know where to go. The calls weren't coming in fast enough. The players weren't getting lined up fast enough. Jordan Leslie had 1,000 plays, and they just needed to simplify stuff. And you hear that a lot in coaching. You really do. It seems like every year you hear that. We got to simplify. I think that's how a lot of coaches start. They start out here and end up here, right? What's working for us?
Mike Leach used to have like his play call sheet was like on a cocktail napkin.
Dana too.
Yeah, I mean that's where he probably learned it. I mean,
it's absolutely where he learned it.
Darndest thing. Yeah.
And then we also had your all-time greatest quarterback for a year.
Graham Harrell.
So, he was very similar. He kind of got it wrong. He only got 1 year. I don't feel like it was enough. But, hey, look, he had JT Daniels, and that just wasn't a great fit. But anyway, I want to find out for you guys, though. Like, obviously, everybody knows about Baron Morton. Everybody knows about
Taj Brooks.
I had a brain fart.
No.
What about your wide receivers, though? That's just not a lot you hear about.
Yeah, they've got, and I think they have a really fascinating group of tight ends. This is, they're going through senior day on Saturday, and they've got 2 tight ends, Jalen Conyers, that's been just really dynamic, and a kid named Mason Tharp, who's like 6'9". He's one of the few guys. I'm about 6'5", 6'6", and when I'm interviewing for the radio broadcast, Mason's one of the few guys that I have to look up to when I'm talking to him. It's pretty wild, but. So it's very well rounded, but the wideouts you're talking about, Josh Kelly, he's one of the top wideouts in the country on third down. I mean, he's in the top 5 or 6 in the league right now.
He's on preseason award list.
Yes, he was, and he was at times one of your best players. He's been battling a foot issue here and there, and he didn't have his best game this past Saturday. But there's been some games where he kind of just takes over. Another guy they're really excited about that really is good with the deep shots is Caleb Douglas. He's the 6'3" kid that can really stretch the field. And then there's Cowboy Coy that we call him around here, Coy Aiken. His dad's a rodeo coach, and Coy is just a tough, like, grew up on the farm kind of kid, and he'll block you, he'll get in your face, and he's just you can't have a hard time tackling him. Yeah, and he's about 6'3", too, about 6'2", 6'3", and those 3 guys play the bulk of the snaps at wideout, and then they, Zach Kitley will put one of these tight ends. They'll use their tight ends in the run game, and he'll put the tight ends and line them up outside, but that's kind of what you're dealing with there. But the skill, as I said, needed to be upgraded big time. They lost, I think, 7 receivers to the portal last offseason. And I think a lot of people from the outside in looked at it and goes, oh, man, Texas Tech's in trouble. I think this was a lot of Texas Tech's decision. One of them ended up in Indiana, and he's playing a lot, Miles Price. And he ended up in a great situation, but it just wasn't working here. Jerron Bradley left here, and he was a starter and had decent numbers. He was a preseason Big 12 guy last year, and it just didn't work. And he's at Boston College and not really doing a whole lot. So, and there's a longer list, but that's been a fun thing to watch because they've needed it, and it has gotten much, much better.
And obviously on the West Virginia side, I guess we need to spend a second on us too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you got 2 really good running backs, man. Yep. I respect the heck out of both White and Donaldson big time.
Yeah, and Donaldson came on last week and had a really good game. Obviously, Garrett, he rushed the ball well. He had some really clutch passes, obviously, and Hudson Clement always really great against man coverage, as we've seen multiple times this year. The loss of Traylon Ray hurts, especially taking the top off the defense. He broke his ankle last week, which was unfortunate.
I was watching that live when it happened, and it was injuries suck, man. That's just all there is to it. Injuries. I just hate that for kids, man. You put a lot into this, and to just come down wrong and have somebody but that's football. I get it, but it sucks, man.
And then obviously we would be remiss if I didn't mention who is the best tackle in the league. There's no doubt about it, man. Wyatt Milam, he hasn't allowed a sack or a pressure in 3 years, and will be a first-round pick. It doesn't get much better than him. A West Virginia born and bred kid that came up, wanted to play at West Virginia, loves being at West Virginia. You just don't get a lot of that anymore in this era. And obviously Zach Frazier was the same way, who's just dominating in the Steelers right now.
Yes, he was.
I think a lot of people underestimated how much of an impact he had on our offensive line last year as well. But yeah, so those are the major players on offense. You mentioned your offensive line. TJ Jackson's one of the best pass rushers in the league. He's got 6.5 sacks. He really had a horrible game against Baylor, bounced back last week. If he's going to do anything, against Baron Morton in that passing attack, although quick passing attack, it'll be him. He'll be the guy that gets back there. Jeremiah Trotter, the great Philadelphia Eagles linebacker. His son plays middle linebacker for us as a true freshman, makes all the calls. It is incredible. we want to keep him as bad as we want to keep him. He's great. And then the secondary is really just a mishmash of, unfortunately, not very good players right now.
Yeah, I heard Neal talk about that. Like not a lot. There's an injury at safety, and and there's some. You just kind of playing who you've got. You don't really have anybody else, and yeah, I think the Red Raiders have dealt with some of that. Just kind of who's in, who's out this week, and all those things. And it's playing defense is difficult, man, because in this league you see the smash mouth, you see the spread, you see tempo, you see running quarterbacks, you see drop. I mean, you see a little bit of everything. So you kind of gotta have a menu of personnel that can kind of match up and have some scheme there that can kind of, because it's not a one size fits all. That's
It's
just
not.
not how this. Yeah, it's not how this thing works. But defensively here, they've been pretty good up until, but they were really old last year. I mean, they had a lot of 6-year seniors that left. 2 years ago they had a first round draft pick in Tyree Wilson. Last year they had a stud safety in Dadrion Taylor Demerson that was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round by the Cardinals, and Miles Cole, who was a 7th round pick as a defensive end, and Tyler Owens, who's playing in the NFL and all that. So, and then they just graduate all these guys and they hand it over to a bunch of redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomore types that are the bulk of this defense, and it's just a bit tricky. So you've seen some inconsistency. They get mixed up with their coverage at times. I think maybe that would be a fair criticism. You were talking about the play sheets, just like a Cheesecake Factory menu. Sometimes that would probably be the case here. Whereas like when they've played better, they've just simplified. Like, hey, we're going to dumb this thing down. Dumb's the wrong word, but we're going to trim it down and just let you guys play fast and like get after teams and all that. And that's really what has worked best. So I just know, if you're Texas Tech, you're going to have to be able to tackle on Saturday. You're going to have to be able to tackle the quarterback and one of the running backs, and you may get beat with a pass here or there. But I think you're going to have to be willing to tackle West Virginia's run game. And it's the offensive line is very well coached.
Right. Garrett
Green what does he reach, like 21 miles an hour on the GPS at different times this year? I love that he's got some swagger to him. I love that in a quarterback. I've had many quarterbacks come through Texas Tech that are really good, and then they'll tell you about it, and that's kind of fun. You got to be good, you got to back it up, and he may have not had the kind of year that he wanted to. Yeah, exactly. I could go through a long list. Even Cliff, as a player here, was kind of like that way back in the day. That's going way back. That's about 20 plus years ago. But so that's where that's really if Texas Tech can kind of tackle in space and just make West Virginia and Garrett Green kind of throw the ball to beat them, that would be obviously ideal. For the Red Raiders, you're trying to get your run game going because that's what opens up other things. And I know, West Virginia will probably run an odd man front, and Texas Tech has typically been better there, against those odd man fronts. Although last week they ran a
4-down. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that maybe has to do with the fact that UCF just has no sense of a passing game. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what we get, but it should be fun. And hey, man, you're telling me there's a chance one of these teams, I guess, depending on if some other things happen, you could find your way into Arlington.
Can you imagine Neal Brown standing in Arlington? It'd be a wild scene, wouldn't it? Nobody'd be happier than me, obviously. I don't care if we get there with 8 wins or 7 wins or whatever. If we get there, you get there.
Yes.
It wouldn't be a great look for the league if either one of us made it, but, who cares? We don't care, do we?
I don't. Yeah, no, I sure don't. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not in the PR business for the Big 12 Conference. I'm in the Texas Tech business. That's right. Yeah, and you're in the Mountaineer business. So absolutely, man, get there by any means necessary. You got to go slash some tires on a BYU bus or a Colorado bus getting to the game and they have to forfeit. I mean, I'm all for that too.
All right, guys. Up next on Locked on West Virginia, we're going to do a really quick prediction and score for this game. You don't want to miss that. Stick around. We'll be right back. This is Locked On Crossover. And this episode of Locked On Crossover is brought to you by Z-Biotics, guys. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by a PhD scientist to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and then you'll feel your very best tomorrow. I don't drink, but I can tell you how to use it. You drink pre-alcohol first for best results. Make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, you got to drink responsibly, guys. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And step 3, enjoy your day tomorrow and wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use Locked On College at checkout for 15% off. And this episode is also brought to you by Game Time, guys. That's right. One of my favorite apps, Game Time. Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Don't forget about that panoramic view from your seat. You can look at it in the app before you buy. And there's a lowest price guarantee that Game Time has. It gives you 110% of the difference if you can find a lower price. You got to download the app, guys. Create the account and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Don't forget about the terms and create that account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app and then ask yourself, well, what time is it? It's game time. And I'm back with Chris Level, Locked On Texas Tech for this crossover episode, man. Yeah, me and you are both gabbers, that's for sure. And I can tell we hit it right. We hit it off right away, Gavin. We went over, man, but this has been fun. Let's get a prediction and score on this game. I think both teams have a lot to play for. What say you, man? What's your gut feeling on this game here?
Yeah, I when you get to this point, I don't know if either team has a realistic, at the end of the day, shot to make it to Arlington. So a lot of times it comes down to who's the most excited to play. Who's juiced up, who just wants to get it over with. I mean, and then I think Neal touched on this too early in the week, and Joey kind of did too. It's that this is a big week for a lot of these kids coming up, and you don't really know. Okay, is there going to be change? Is my routine going to be affected? Am I not even going to be here anymore? Do I want to be here anymore? I mean, who knows? So all that, the portal and staff changes or whatever may be going on could be clouding their thought process and who knows? So I say all that to offer up that, it's really just about who's pumped to be there, who really wants to finish it out strong. I kind of expect, in a way, and it's an early kick too, by the way, but I kind of expect an ugly game, kind of one of those, I don't know, 31-27 with just not we're just kind of both teams kind of kicking around a little bit and, kind of, I don't know, that's for whatever reason. Because the one thing I'll say about West Virginia, and I used to say this about Huggins' teams too, but it's still, whether it was Dana and the guys were walking around with a sledgehammer before the game, or whether it's like Neal, there's still some common themes with West Virginia. They are very blue collar. They don't screw a lot up penalty wise. They're just solid, and they're gonna fight you. Some Saturdays better than others. I certainly understand that, but that's just generally speaking, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get these guys are going to try to punch you in the mouth, and you're going to try to throw it over the top of them. Sometimes you're going to try to do all those things, but I see a close game. It's just a matter of who's kind of the most excited and who's trying to improve their bowl standing. Right. That kind of thing. Because that's at the end of the day, realistically, that's probably what we're looking at here. There's just a slimmest of margins. You would need a lot of a lottery winning on Saturday or even on Friday too, I guess, to have to have it work out where one of these two teams can make it.
And you made a great point there. If what needs to happen on Friday happens for either team, that's one peg knocked off the board. Then you got some momentum that direction, right?
Yeah.
So I think
absolutely.
That's a big part of the equation. What happens on Friday with Colorado? Is it Colorado?
Yep, the Colorado Oklahoma State. And if the Buffs get the same version of the Pokes that I just saw, hey. I mean, Colorado, will have their hands full because I'm telling you, if they're right and they're motivated in this freshman quarterback, because they've got some skill players to make it interesting. And he onside kicked in the middle of the game. They're running flea flickers. Ollie Gordon played quarterback for a whole series. So they were trying to win on their senior day, and they were emptying the bucket. So if they do the same thing on Friday in Boulder, Colorado could have their hands full, or they could just no-show, and Colorado could win 50-0. So who the heck knows?
Who the heck knows? I think for me it's going to be I'll say this. Man, those boys came out and fought hard for Neal Brown last week. There was absolute no give up, 100% buy-in. These kids love Neal. I talk to them all the time. There's very few players that are upset with Neal. So there is that, and it's worth something. Because I think the consensus is like he might be gone after this game if they lose. So that's a lot of pressure for a team to have. And I don't know how they're going to respond, Chris. It could be bad for you guys. It could be good for you guys. I just think you guys are a little bit better than us, man. I just do. So I'm going to say Texas Tech wins this game 34-30. I think it'll be a game in the 30s, low 30s.
And this has just been one of these teams. Neal coached here for, I said, 3 years, but while he's been at West Virginia, he's 1-4 against the Red Raiders. It's just, and like Texas Tech has those teams too, where it's like, man, you just can't. Kansas State's one of those teams. It doesn't matter who's coaching for you or for them. You can't beat Kansas State, and you're not alone there. But for whatever reason, it's like Texas Tech been and last year, that was the first win for Neal over Texas Tech, and you're throwing into the end zone, and that's when Tyler Shuck went down with a broken ankle.
Yeah,
and Baron Morton came in, and he's been the quarterback since. But he got hurt in that game too with his shoulder. But he's throwing into the end zone at the end of the game to, I think, either win it or tie it or one of those things. But
it was a good game.
Yeah, it was. It was in the rain and all that. That's why I kind of say that this one it's not going to rain Saturday in Lubbock or anything like that. But I just think it'll be kind of a grind, if you will. And maybe we get into a shootout. I don't know. Maybe we get into special teams blunders or some special teams play or a turnover fest. I don't know. You just
that would favor you guys, a shootout, no doubt.
Well, and I think we'd be prepared for that with the Red Raiders. They're used to getting.
Neal Brown's a guy. He wants to get 25 first downs and hold the ball for 35 minutes. And
I get it. He's trying to protect his defense, trying to shrink the game a little bit, and keep the offense off the field.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see kind of who wins the battle of wills there and who gets to play it on their terms. But my man, you are all class, Paul. Appreciate you hosting this show and. Yep. Thank you for doing it. We'll do it again. Basketball season rolls around. I'm here anytime.
Hey, tell everybody where they can find you before you go.
Yeah, Locked On Texas Tech, man, or on the old Twitter or the X at Chris Level. But yeah, Locked On Texas Tech, Cowan and I every day. So appreciate it. Enjoyed my time with Locked On for about 2.5, 3 years now. I guess it's been, and you've joined the team recently, but been a great addition. So. Hope everybody watches all your Mountaineer coverage on a daily basis, man. We'll do this again.
Man.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Guys, thank you for joining us on this episode. And don't forget, you can't forget to make Locked On West Virginia or Texas Tech your first listen, guys. Thank you for making us the first listen. For your second listen, we got to plug our guy Drake over at Locked On Big 12. He leads the conversation in conference realignment news and holds no punches when it comes to covering every team in the Big 12. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, guys. Listen, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game. We'll see who wins, and I'm sure we'll both have post games after the fact. Be there for that, guys. And until then, we are out of here.